After we've moved out of the ascending limb of the loop of Henle, we get into the distal tubule. The distal tubule is used to reabsorb salt, and although large quantities of salt are not really reabsorbed here, because most of the sodium chloride that you're going to reabsorb, you've already reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule and in the loop of Henle. What's important about the distal tubule is that the salt reabsorption can be controlled by the hormone aldosterone, and the more aldosterone you have in the system, the more sodium you reabsorb from here. So it's tweaking, because it's not a great deal of salt that's being reabsorbed from here, but it's controllable, and that's going to be an important part of volume regulation by the kidney. After the distal tubule, you get to the collecting duct system. The collecting duct then takes the fluid and moves it back down through the inner medulla until eventually it reaches the ureter and will go down into the bladder, and that's your urine that you've lost. The important thing about the collecting duct system is that it's a one-way street, so it doesn't do a hairpin loop and come back up like the loop of Henle did. If you imagine that the collecting duct is impermeable to water, then we can produce dilute urine. The reason that this is possible is that the tubular fluid which had left the loop of Henle was hypoosmotic, it was dilute. That then moves through the distal tubule and more salt is reabsorbed, and then it reaches the collecting duct, and this hypotonic fluid, this hypoosmotic fluid, is just going to move through the medulla, but if it's impermeable to water, nothing's going to move, and the dilute fluid is going to be lost as dilute urine. And of course, if you've drunk quite a lot of water, that's what you're going to be doing. But where the kidney really comes into its own is in the production of concentrated urine, which is something that only mammalian kidneys and bird kidneys can do, because only we have loops of Henle. Under such circumstances, if you need to produce concentrated urine, your body is releasing the hormone called antidiuretic hormone, also known as vasopressin, from the posterior pituitary gland. Antidiuretic hormone increases the water permeability of the collecting duct system. It does this by transporting molecules called aquaporins onto the membranes of the collecting duct cells. Aquaporins are essentially channels for water. So the more aquaporins you have in your membrane, the more permeable you are to water. If you want to produce concentrated urine, you've got lots of antidiuretic hormone in the system, which means the collecting duct becomes very permeable to water. And remember, the collecting duct is moving through the medulla, which has got concentrated fluid within it, and it's only moving one way. What that means is that as the fluid moves down the tubule towards the inner medulla, water can leave across the tubular membrane, and that will concentrate the fluid that remains. So as the fluid is moving down the collecting duct system, increasing amounts of water are being reabsorbed until finally the urine which enters the renal pelvis and ultimately heads towards the bladder is more concentrated than blood.